Jack Dreyer, first of all, for the youngsters, let's show your grips, and also let's get into how each pitch has, evolved for you.
Right.
As you show the camera.
Yeah. So first is the fastball. I throw it the most out of all of my pitches. Um, the important thing for me is I always have the label on the inside of the ball, and that's just a consistency thing. So when I go to grab it, all of my pitches, it's going to be on the inside or facing me. It's never going to be facing away or towards the hitter. Even if there's a subtle chance that a hitter can see like the dark print, I try to keep that away from them. So with the fastball, pretty stock, horseshoe on the outside, just holding it like that. I have a pretty true fastball, so it carries a lot. And so movement-wise, I'm not getting a ton of, side to side. It's pretty vertical. And so then going off of that, we just flip it 90 degrees, and that's right on my slider. I like to just have the tip of my middle finger right here. My slider is probably more cuttery than like a sweeper or something like that. And so, my pillar of my slider is to try to throw it as hard as I can. And so I want it to be close in velo to my fastball. So it's not going to move a ton, but it's going to die off compared to what the fastball does. So that's just right there. And then last one's the curveball. I don't use it a ton. The whole purpose of it is to be more front to back, slow hitters down, because with fastball and slider being similar speeds, they can just kind of get used to that range. And so a curveball kind of slows it down a little bit. And so that's just putting the tips right on the edge there. And then I like to have a pretty high thumb, and just come through it like that. So those are the three pitches.
Is Clayton Kershaw giving you any advice on the slider?
He's given me advice on all of my pitches. I would say movement-wise, our pitches are fairly similar. A pretty true fastball, and then that slider, more gyro slider, and then a curveball. And so we talk a lot about how you can use the speed difference to go front to back, and then also play the fastball and slider off of each other. So he's been a huge help.
What an honor. I mean, how special is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Going back to, I think, 2016, I have pictures in my camera roll of us side by side comparing mechanics. And so, to be his teammate is really special, but not just a teammate, but also somebody who can have a conversation about baseball with him. It's a really cool opportunity.
You grew up in baseball. I face your father, by the way. Does that mean I'm old? Probably, but how much did growing up in baseball help you to understand the game a little bit more? And also talk about your perseverance, because not getting drafted is not easy for a youngster.
Right. Well, I'd say, having my dad understand baseball at a deeper level than, an average dad would, has been a huge help. He did such a good job when I was younger of differentiating when he was my dad and when he was my coach. And that's not an easy, line to walk on. But I think he did a great job. And so, after games, I can talk to him as a dad, or I can talk to him as a coach. And both of those conversations really help. And so then, like you said, not getting drafted, it was never a question of whether I would continue to try to play baseball or not. That was certain. I was going to play baseball as long as I could. He helped me a lot with encouragement and just understanding like, hey, this is where you are right now. And yeah, it might be a tougher road than some other guys, but it doesn't matter. That's your road. And so it was just put your head down, go to work. My mantra has always been focus on what you can control. In baseball, there are a lot of things that you can see on the sidelines with, the media or on TV or, other teams, whatever it is. And it's hard sometimes to stay focused on what you can control. And so that's kind of my main goal every year, every season when I play, is just to focus on what I can control.
So much competition and kids, vying for spots and travel ball and things like that. Can you directly just tell those kids that don't get drafted or are just not being pursued as much, the message, the advice? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, at the end of the day, if you are putting in the work consistently, there are people out there who will find you. You don't need to go to every showcase. You don't need to, ramp up and be throwing 6 innings in January, crazy things like that, which I've had, teammates who have done in the past. At the end of the day, you need to take a look in and understand who you are at your core and what you can do to get better and things like that. Because if you don't know yourself, then how can you possibly try to get better? And so I think understanding yourself at a deeper level, not just what other people are telling you. You need to really reflect inside on yourself, and that's, I think, the most important part.
When you're watching a game from the dugout or the bullpen, tell me a guy that you really stop to say, I got to watch this guy even though he's not a teammate. Is there one guy or two?
Even though he's not a teammate. Ooh, that's a good question. One thing that I like to do is, being left-handed, typically there's focus on, lefty-lefty. And so I kind of like to watch righties pitch because there are more righties. And so I watch how they attack righties. And I wouldn't say there's anybody specifically, but just to face somebody who's on the same side as your arm, and see how they go about, attacking hitters. I think there's a lot to be learned from that. And, I think a lot of times we look to compare ourselves to people who have things that are so similar to us, but I think you can still learn a lot from guys who might not even throw the same pitches that you throw. So I think that's a lot of fun for me, is to kind of see how, our guys in the box get pitched from the other team, because I get to see our hitters, 500-600 plate appearances a year. So I like to think that I know their approach pretty well. And so to watch other teams face them, I think there's a lot to be learned there.
So there's so much shit talk in the minor league about when you get there, but is there one thing or two you remember that going, you know what? I could not have learned that until I got here, because you can't replicate it anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is, we talk a lot about how, as a reliever, availability is so important. Staying healthy, being able to bounce back and recover, those kinds of things. And in the minor leagues, you're playing 130, 150 games at AAA. And so the number of games from AAA to the big leagues is only 12 more games, which doesn't seem, too drastic. But the amount of kind of turnaround time between games is completely different. And, your ability to recover is completely changed. I've already well surpassed my outings, my appearances, and my innings pitched from last year. And, we still have 40 games to go. So I think understanding how your body recovers is one thing that you just can't learn because you haven't gone through it yet. So when you get here, it's like, hey, your body needs to be ready. And so what can you do to get it ready?
Let's get to the fun stuff, like the Rubik's Cube. What is going on with that? I mean, explain to me how you got so good at that.
So I first learned it in high school. Me and a buddy just kind of, I found my parents one from when they were a kid in our attic somewhere, and started working with it. And then slowly over time got better and better. And then in college, I had a season where I was injured and wasn't traveling with the team. And instead of studying, I decided to get really good at Rubik's Cubes. And so I always chalk it up to having a lot of alone time. But I slowly, memorized algorithms, got better and better at it, and then kind of flipped to the artwork side of it, making the murals, with the last one that I did being Shohei. So, it's just been kind of a culmination of several years of slowly tweaking things with the Rubik's Cube. But it's just a fun thing for me to take my mind off of things and just focus on something that, isn't really too important.
How many guys have approached you to go, hey, can you give them a little training here? You talk about art and all that kind of stuff.
In spring training, I actually had a competition with Tommy Edman, trying to solve it. We gave him a little bit of a head start. So that was pretty fun. But over the years, I've probably taught, 15 or 20 teammates. I don't know how long they retain that information, but there is a period of time where they do know how to do it for a short time. So, it's a great conversation starter. We can talk about it all the time. It's just kind of, one of my hobbies.
Okay, lastly, what is it like, young player, to take the mound at Dodger Stadium and have that view behind home plate?
Yeah, that's one thing that we actually talk a lot about coming up through the minor leagues with our mental coaches. They call it, the third deck syndrome. Because obviously playing in any big league park is very special. But Dodger Stadium, you get up on the mound and you see the stands behind you, and then you look up and you see the stands again, and then you look up even higher and there's a third deck. And not a lot of places have that, especially, that wrap that far around. And so it's really, really special, and the atmosphere is incredible. A night game when they shut off the lights and everybody goes nuts. Like there's nothing that matches it. And we're lucky now with interleague play. We get to play in a lot of different stadiums, And so I've already pitched in 20 of the 30 parks, and Dodger Stadium just doesn't even compare. Like there's no place that's even close to it, with the volume, the fans, and then like you said, that third deck, it's really special.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Arigato gozaimasu.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you.